Last summer, I asked Peyton to write an article about my lifelong sports car project.
Written from an English sports car's point of view, this is what she came up with.
I would like to tell you a story. I am a 1957 Triumph TR3 English sports car. It's been a while since I crossed the pond, and my accent has faded like my paint. But this story begins in 1967, when I was covered in rust and in pieces, separated from my body parts. I was put up for sale in the hope that someone would take a chance to put me back together again. Dennis Pollard, aka Bampy, was the name on the $50 check of the young motorhead that would give me a home. The rebuilding process began almost immediately. I was stripped and taken apart piece by piece. Bampy replaced some of me with new and better parts, while other parts he cleaned up and reused to help me run again. He bought me a new fiberglass body, worked tirelessly to make it fit my frame, finishing it off with a coat of bright blue paint. Finally, after these replacements, I was able to run again. Bampy flaunted me about the streets, taking me not only to work, but also to his favorite haunts. After a decade of constant use, I felt myself starting to fall apart. Suddenly, I found myself back in the garage, barely able to see the light of day. I was rolled into the back of a garage in Massachusetts. Years passed and seasons changed. It really wasn't bad until Bampy loosely wrapped the dreaded tarp around my body. I could no longer see the folks wandering through the garage, wondering what would become of me. Here I sat for a decade, blind to the world, shut out and cast away. From 1990 to 2009, I was moved around from garage to garage, barn to barn. Then one day, I felt my door swing open. Bampy's grandchildren, 3 of them, were using me as a jungle gym. It felt freeing to be used again, but I still longed to be started and run as a sports car. Bampy's grandchildren had found their new plaything. The 7-year-old granddaughter Peyton took my steering wheel, gripping it tightly in her tiny hands and jolting it left, then right, then back left. She envisioned me back on the streets, racing through the yellow and white lines. I could almost feel the pavement under my wheels and the rush of oil through my crankshaft again. Suddenly, I saw outside my windshield not a toolbox and the inside of a garage, but a racetrack in France. Then one day Peyton, the youngest, crawled out of my seats, never to crawl back. She and the other grandchildren had grown up, and they got their own cars. Once again, I felt the same feeling of neglect for at least a decade more. Each day was the same as the next. My life once again was confined to the inside of a cold, dank garage in Massachusetts. I felt neglected and alone. After years had gone by, one day, I woke up to a painful sting on my windshield. I was soaking wet from a power washer held by Bampy's now 18-year-old grandson, Jeremy. He had a motivated look on his face. He called Bampy out to the garage to help. Bampy also wore a determined face, one that I hadn't seen for decades. This is now the beginning of my redemption story. I was being taken apart piece by piece, slowly over many weeks or even months. My frame was grit blasted down to bare metal and then painted with rust preventative paint. I got many new parts and lots of fabricated ones. Wow, where do I start to explain my newfound joy? Maybe it's with my new Wasp high-torque starter that painlessly turned me over, allowing my new electric fuel pump, pressure regulator, and fuel lines to supply ample fuel to the newly rebuilt SU carb for its successful ignition. Suddenly, one could hear the mighty roar of my new stainless steel header, muffler, and exhaust system. Soon I was up to temperature and running smoothly, appreciating the increased airflow through my new aluminium radiator, stainless steel hoses, and twin thermostatically controlled fans, not to mention my new angled mounting brackets fabricated by Bampy's son, Daryl. As the project progresses, I'm seeing Daryl more and more. I think one day he'll inherit me, and once again I'll be driven around proudly. What I'm looking forward to the most is my first road test, so I can show off all my newer technology and handling modifications to both Bampy and Daryl. Bampy upgraded my front suspension, allowing my chassis tuner the ability to adjust my camber and caster to accommodate my new radial tires. Once my suspension is properly tuned, driving me through the tightest of turns with my new rack and pinion steering will be effortless. So this is just what Bampy, Daryl and Jeremy have done to my frame and running gear. All in all, my life hasn't been that bad. I bet many of my old friends from the factory in Coventry, England, have suffered far worse fates than mine. Most of them are sitting around boneyards left for dead, abandoned, giving up their parts one by one to keep cars like me still running. I can't wait to see how Bampy and Daryl improve and bring my body back to its former self. Who knows? Maybe even Bampy's grandchildren will someday sit in my seat and drive me for real to some of their favorite horn.